Be careful. They might be infecting your brain. What kind of parasite is this? Is this a parasite? Not quite. Scientists discover unique brain development that only exists in people who played Pokémon as kids. All the stars may have been worth it after all. Hey, that's a good parasite then. Better than the actual power of Pokémon. Playing Pokémon when you were younger may have actually advanced your brain in a way few others experienced. As a shocking new scientific study outlines this unique development. Anyone who found a love for gaming from a young age is bound to have experienced plenty of moments when your parents had to pull you away from the screen. And there's a good chance that you might have been playing Pokémon at the very moment. How did you know that? Hey, Harry, how do you know that? Is this guy a fad? For many, Nintendo synonymous with Pokémon while not technically being a first-party title, and the quest to catch them all often led to hours and hours of playtime across countless childhoods. What a shame! The catching them all is not a thing anymore. Unless you use Pokémon Home, maybe? I understand they have way too many Pokémon, but still. There was also that, I don't know if it was a tweet, or actually said by somebody from Game Freak or the Pokémon Company, that maybe, someday, they will finally have more than 10,000 Pokémon. We have more than 1,000, I already think it's way too much. Cynics might call that time wasted. Once you drop a new scientific study, has revealed that it likely contributed to unique developments in the brain, perhaps giving Pokémon lovers a cognitive advantage over everyone else. See, I played Pokémon, that's why I'm so smart. It's just a kid's game, is it really? It's shared by a Stanford report. Researchers at Stanford University have discovered that adults who played Pokémon extensively as children have developed a dedicated brain region for storing information regarding the Pocket monsters, which then leads to preferential activation. Wait, hold up. Is that actually useful? I don't know, that starts to feel a little bit like brain rot. The functional organization of human high-level visual cortex, such as the face, and plays selective regions, is strictly consistent across individuals, a study published in Nature Human Behavior Posits. An answer question in neuroscience concerns which dimensions of official information constrain the development and topography of the shared brain organization. It continues, boosting the unique experience of Pokémon-loving children is a means to find the answer. We show not only that adults who have Pokémon experience demonstrate distinct, distributed cortical responses to Pokémon, but also that experience retinal eccentricity during childhood calculate the locus of Pokémon responses in adulthood. The study illustrates. Is this just about pattern recognition? It might be, which is not something that strange, right? And there are many studies about that. My favorite one is made with 1-day-old babies that actually showcases how male babies prioritize shapes in the things they get shown, and female babies prioritize faces. I'm assuming human faces. So that's how the brain works, I suppose. The study's first author, Jesse Gomez. Wow, I didn't know Jesse was Mexican? Where's James? Was an avid Pokemon lover himself at an early age. Oh, I guess that's a guy. Whoops. And it's his own experience to wonder why so many people are able to retain this information in a dedicated space as opposed to similar material like cars. What's unique about Pokemon is there are hundreds of characters and you have to know everything about them in order to play the game successfully, Gomez explains. I mean, maybe not everything, but I'm assuming broad stat distribution and the typings, but you should understand the typings when you see the designs. Some types are a little bit strange, I will give you that, but if you see a fish, well, it's probably a water type. If you see a plant, well, it's probably a grass type. And if you see something other than fire, it's either dead or a fire type. So I don't know if it's exactly like that. The game rewards you for individuating hundreds of these little similar looking characters. I figured if you don't get a region for that, then it's never going to happen. What's not possible right now to prove that Pokemon is the only thing that prompts these unique brain space to be created is one of the only non-name or face properties that possess such a distinction, which is quite a discovery. That's somewhat surprising. I wonder if it has to do with the designs? And maybe that's why other similar games, other monster collectors, were not as successful, because maybe they lacked this information retaining component that Pokemon has. That's quite a curious thing to study, not gonna lie. Maybe that's why also some fun games struggle a lot. At least it happened to me. I mentioned before the whole Puppet Dance Performance, which is a Pokemon inspired, even though the mechanics are pretty much the same, the whole RPG. Once again, the basic mechanics are just Pokemon, It's in 1v1, catching is a little bit different, and they have a different type chart. And sure, they have, instead of evolutions, they have style change, and they can have 2 or 3 different styles, and each style may be wildly different from each other. But I had so much trouble remembering the types, it was not even funny. I always had the type chart on the side, and I was trying to think, okay, what type could you be? Steel? Wind? Illusion? I have no idea. Let's tap this. Oh, immune. Whoops, that's a big mistake. I guess this also helps in the case because, of course, you played Pokémon since you were really young, right? Some people more young than others, for sure. Some of the most surprising research. I mean, Stanford in California is really home to the maximum professors who played Pokémon right from Gen 1 as a kid. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I guess the issue was actually when they started changing type effectiveness, like Dark being weak to bug, etc. It didn't really change too much. I usually struggle more with abilities like Sturdy. I have Sturdy, not a big deal. Oh shit, hold up, it's the new Sturdy. That's a big problem. And I think the biggest change was Fairy type in Gen 6, right? Not only they added the Fairy type, which also affects a bunch of stuff, got me a little bit too old, and Fairy type is not that prolific still. But it will change some other interactions, like suddenly it still is no longer resisting ghosts or dark types. And why not? Well, maybe it still was already too powerful, right? That makes sense. There were also a couple of changes in Gen 2. That was just the addition of Steel and Dark types, but now Bug, instead of being weak to poison, is resistant, I think, and something else, not just the Bug with the Ghost and Psychic interaction. I was really annoying the Fairy type, yeah, against the Bouncing type, but I hate Fairy as a concept being strong to dragons, design-wise. It's somewhat tame. I understand why they did that, but I don't know if Fairy was the best name to give it. Dragon was way too prolific in Gen 5, especially Gen 5. You would see the hyper-offensive of Dragon types, Fighting types, or Dark types. Whoops, all 3 of them are weak to Fairy, I wonder why. I guess it kinda is easier to implement that Light, something like that. Dragons are not necessarily evil after all, but it is strange. Maybe they shouldn't be immune to Dragon. They should have gone with something like Holy type. I guess the implementation could be a little bit strange. Just have a lot of people nowadays trying to maybe not force, but calling for the implementation of Light type or Sound type, and I'm like, hey, do you know what kind of game has those? Toho, Puppet Dance Performance, completely different game, but you have those. I do think that Sound is way better done as just a keyword. It's fine. There's not enough stuff. Some type is legitimate though, I'm not a big fan of it. Could probably buff some Pokemon like Exploud, but that's probably it. I do like the normal types. Do not take them away from me. Makes sense logically. Does it really? I mean, if you have Ice, if you have Psychic, Sound is not that outlandish. I guess I just don't like it. And I'm biased. Blame me if you must. But I wonder if this brain mechanism of being able to remember Pokemon actually helps you with other stuff. I know, and maybe just have a really good memory, but I do remember a lot of stuff about games I have played, not just Pokemon. Especially the MMOs I played. Hey, the best stat distribution. This one. Haven't played the game in like 10 years or more. That one's the best stat distribution. Because you need to hit those specific numbers. Why do I remember? I have no idea. I guess I'm just too smart. Where's my Pokemon Professor diploma? I guess not.